G'day YouTube people, we're back in Eric Street and we're having a look at what the Subi Post had to say about the green bike lane outside the Ocean Beach Hotel back on the 1st of April. And yeah, they're complaining that it's going to stay like this until someone backs out and clips a cyclist, and by that we mean someone backing out of the angled parking across the road. Well, you've got to ask yourself, look at all the space they've got there to back out. How big a vehicle would you have to be able to back out of there and drive into that green bike lane? I mean, look at this car coming out. They've got all the room in the world if they wanted to just drive straight ahead at this point. Now, of course, they aren't, because that's a one-way street, and obviously they don't want to turn left on Marine Parade. They want to go back up Eric Street. So they've done something stupid and illegal. And yes, so that's how they could clip a cyclist. But, you know, what do you do about people? Now, in this case, look, I have in fact spotted a couple of people stopping in the bike lane, I think to let people out of the car. But interestingly, the article also said the elderly Ocean Beach Hotel patrons got an unwelcome surprise on Tuesday when they arrived for their monthly lunch. The disabled bay next to the hotel's Eric Street entrance had been replaced with a long green painted strip for the contentious Eric Street bike path. Oh, where are the disabled to park their vehicles now that the disabled parking spot's gone? Oh, what's that over there in that spot there? Yes, it's a blue wheelchair logo. All the council's done is they've relocated the disabled parking spot across to there where all the other cars can park. So yeah, you can pull your bus in there and the patrons just have to walk a couple of meters across this stretch of road over the curb and they're in the pub. Now, what I did notice, amazingly, were these CCTV towers, which I've never seen before. I don't know if they're new. Look, I don't know if they're here as part of the bike path to keep an eye on what drivers are doing. You can see there's one down the other end of the street, but look, it's possible cars have been broken into, cars have been stolen, maybe there's been antisocial behaviour with people coming out of the pub and, doing silly things when they're drunk. I have no clue. Might be worth asking the council to, see what they're there for. But the other insane thing about this whole article is this idea that drivers are just so incredibly incompetent that they could back out of those parking spaces. And yet, if they're doing it sensibly and legally and just intending to drive down this one-way street and exit at Marine Parade like they're supposed to, that they could be so incompetent as to drive into that green zone. Because you've got to remember, where that green strip of paint is, there used to be cars parked along there all the time. Now the plans say that lane is 2.5 metres wide. How much wider is that than a vehicle? Well, let's have a look at a typical Western Suburbs runabout. The Land Cruiser, 1885mm, and that's linked side to side, not to the wing mirrors. And you can see from just looking at this Honda here, how much of the bike lane this vehicle fills. If that car was parked there, you've got to ask yourself, how many drivers reversed out of here over the last 20 or 30 years and smacked their car as they're reversing into a car parked on the left-hand side of the road? I mean, how many insurance claims were there from incompetent drivers coming out of that angle parking, hitting cars on the other side of the road? And I've got to say, unless the drivers were completely drunk as skunks, the answer is probably zero. So how is it you can go from a situation where drivers have been happily reversing out of there for ages, for decades, and not hitting any parked cars, and suddenly they're going to start reversing out of there and going further than they ever have before and start clipping cyclists in the bike lane? To me, it just does not make sense. Not at all. But look, if it was a risk and drivers were coming out of that angled parking in the past and going too far and smashing into cars, well, isn't that a good reason for removing the parking on the southern side of Eric Street? I mean, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Because you're just stopping all these collisions and smashed up cars. Yeah, I don't think they thought about that, did they?